Hello everyone, Namaste. I am Yashaswini Bharadwaj, and today we'll be discussing about prevention of seasonal disorders in children. I hope you all can hear me properly. If at all there is any difficulty, please feel free to send the message on the chat box. I'm not turning on the video for the purpose of, for the sake of my weak internet, but otherwise, it would have been a good thing to, have face-to-face chat. Anyways, so prevention of seasonal disorders, especially in children. So, we have seasons, and a season is, how do we define season? It is a set of weather conditions, whether similar with days with similar kind of daylight, similar kind of temperature, similar kind of moisture content, and similar behavior in the atmosphere and the environment. And it is a cyclical thing that seasons change during the year. It is a very natural thing. And because it is a natural thing, it is like the rhythm of the nature. And because of that, it is called as Ritu in Sanskrit. Ritu comes from Rita, which is the law of nature. And because it abides by the law of nature and because it sets the law of nature, it is called as Ritu. We have 6 Ritus, classification of 6 Ritus, and the Ritus may not be similar in all the geographical places, but you cannot exceed these 6 Ritus. There's no 7th Ritu. So it may be lesser than 6, but it would not be more than 6. Whatever the variations are all covered under these 6 Ritus. So without any fixed point of beginning or end, we can say that we have spring going to summer, and then there's rain, which can be during summer or it could spread out to autumn, or in some places it's basically any time during the year. And after summer and rains in between or whatever, we would go to an early autumn, and then there's a full-fledged autumn, that is late autumn, which is closer to the winter, and then there's a proper winter. After winter, it comes back to spring. So this is the cycle, and wherever it is in the world, the cycle is similar. So in Southern Hemisphere, where we have Australia, New Zealand, and other parts of Southern Americas and Africa and so on, the pattern or the time of the year would be different than the countries of northern part of hemisphere, but the cycle is the same. It's always spring after winter, it's always autumn, summer after spring, and autumn after summer, and so on. The rains may be distributed in a different way. The character of each season may be different and may slightly vary in different countries, or there could be some missed season in certain countries, but overall it's the same pattern, and it is nature. So why do we have problems when it is natural? Why there are diseases that are specifically related to certain season when it is all in nature? Nature shouldn't actually give us any disease, right? But we do have seasonal diseases. It is a fact. It doesn't affect only the children. It can affect anyone, but children are more susceptible to it because they have less immunity, less strength, and less stability in their body to fight against all odds. So children are more susceptible, and hence focus more on children in this regard. So why do we have seasonal problems? And when we say season, as I said earlier, It is about the temperature. It is about the moisture. It is about the light, daylight, winds, rain, thunderstorm, and everything that comes along with it, the chemical changes around us. And it's also about the virus, bacteria, insects, and everything else, like the vegetation, the way the plants and animals behave, the way they react to this change. Some of the vegetables and fruits and everything changes as per the season. So here is the key. Why do we have seasonal problems? Is because along with the change, every living substance in this environment changes. They have a particular way of reacting to it, and unless we modify and we adapt to this change, we have to go along with the change. And unless we go along with this change, we suffer a problem. We will face the problem. So it is essential for us to go along with the flow and change accordingly. And if we don't adapt to these changes, then there is a problem. It is not the season that is a problem, it is stagnation within us, or the challenges within ourselves, or the lack of preparation to this change that gives us the problem. So let us look into it more deeply and from an Ayurvedic perspective. So we have 5 Mahabhutas, basically. Forget all the subtle aspects, but we have in the cross form as well, we have 5 Mahabhutas. And the changes that we see around us occur visibly in these 5 Mahabhutas and the aspects of these 5 Mahabhutas. And these 5 Mahabhutas, they do not affect only us, they affect everything around us as well. And that is why there's a change in food substances that are available. There's a change in the rasa of each substance that is available. So the cherry that you have during winter, late winter, and the cherry that you have at the end of summer is definitely different. Mango that's absolutely sweet during summer is very sour and very bad if at all you have it during the rains in India. So things change, the rasas change as per whatever is going on in the environment as per the season. And because the rasa changes, there's an impact on everything else. The guna changes, the influence of the same on the doshas in our body changes. Because the gunas change in the environment as well, there's a change of the similar gunas inside our body too. And because gunas change, again the doshas go into an imbalance, or there are repercussions on the doshas. There's repercussion on Agni. The activity of the organisms around us changes, and similarly there are organisms which help inside our body, which helps the regular functioning, and they change as well. The behavior of the internal universe changes according to the external universe. And we, as a whole organism, need to do certain adaptations to go along with this change. So it is about the individual effort to go along with whatever the community is doing. So let us look into the details of every season and what are their general characters and how the Mahabhutas change and what are the other parameters. So grossly, the seasons can be divided into 2 further divisions, the Adana Kala and Visarga Kala. Visarga Kala is where you have more reserves and season is more favorable compared to the Adana Kala. Each season can be very harsh as well, but still, it is when the power of the sun is reduced and power of moon is more, there is more coolness or power of more of moon and the water thing playing on in the environment. Whereas in the Adana Kala, it is more of the sun and the wind, so it dries you up. Here in Visargakala, it supplies more to you. There is more in the environment that you can take if you have the power to take. And it is up to you to build that power. Whereas in Adana Kala, all you can do is retain your power because the environment really takes everything away from you. So this is the difference. It is not about how harsh the winter is. Even if it is a harsh winter, it could be, it could be really icy, but still it is Visargakala. It is still the cold season. It is still the domain of moon. It is still the domain of water. And if you have the strength, if you have the bala in you, you can always gain from it. It doesn't suck from you. So the character of the best of all season, that is the late autumn or Hemanta, the character is that it is predominated with cold winds. It's a chilly weather, but it is not very cold as in bone-chilling winter. It is pleasant. You might need a sweater or a cardigan, but you still all right. You are happy to go around, and everything else looks beautiful. And the rasa predominant here is Madhura, and Madhura is the most natural rasa for every life, every organism. Mahabhuta here is Prithvi and Jala or water, and that is why it is so nourishing. Every dosha is in balance. This is the best season. So that is why I've started with this season. There's a balance here, and then we'll see how things go into balance. Agni is optimum. So this is a time where you build upon your strength. So there are suggested diet and the substances one can take. Actually, maintaining a very optimum Agni, the nature supports it, and you just have to maintain it, and indulge in those diet and lifestyles which will improve the bala. Here you have to eat according to your prakriti. Indulge according to your prakriti. Go into something which can build your bala. And specifically for children, this is the time where you can, give more of the rasayanas. We'll come to it later. But this is the time where you can ask them to indulge in whatever they want to do some exercises as well. Let them be bring the best out of them. Do not hold them back for anything. That is, if at all you have to hold them back, it's only from excessive training and excessive indulgence in or drying activities. If we are able to maintain in this level in this season, then it would be the best outcome for every season. We don't have to manage too much. But if things go wrong here, then there'll be a lot of imbalances we'll have to manage further on. So late autumn or Hemanta is the best season to begin with, and probably in some parts of the world we might be reaching there soon. So it might be early autumn or spring. I don't know. Yeah. So Shishira, the next season is winter, and winter is very cold with very cold winds as well. Not the same everywhere, but predominantly marked by this feature again. And here the rasa is bitter. and Mahabhuta is Akasha because it is very cold and very windy as well. Mahabhuta is Akasha, and you see it. It is grey. Winter is depressing. Winter is bitter. Winter is the time when there are seasonal affective disorders. That is a kind of depression which is related to season, and it is more prevalent in children. It happens it happens in any age group, but it is very visibly seen in children and elderly because then they survive from this inspiration from the sunlight. They have to have the sunlight to for the daily activities. Sunlight brings kind of energy, a mental clarity, and when that is deprived for a period longer time, weeks and months, and in some parts of the world winter is prolonged, and in those parts it is specifically very depressing. And it is the period of sanchaya of kapha. Kapha builds in your body, and it is not the kapha that is helping. It is not the kapha that is actually, providing any function, useful function in the body. It is just building upon because the nature is like that. People put on weight during winter, and because there is kapha sanchaya, people don't, in the initial part of the winter, they indulge on all the heavy stuff, and later on there is a repulsion to all of these stuff, uh, anything that increases kapha. Look at the contrast here. The Mahabhuta predominant is Akasha, which should be stimulating Vata, but the dosha that is getting piled up is Kapha. Why? Because it has been carried off from the previous season, and it is in the nature of this particular season that because it is so cold and because it lacks that kind of movement around, it builds kapha in the body. So this is the paradox which is actually very damaging during winter. Agni is Tikshna. Agni is very strong. You can practically digest anything and you feel hungry all the time. Indulging in heavy substances again puts on more kapha in the body. But at the same time, you cannot go against it as well because the weather is against it. The Mahabhuta predominant is against it. The rasa is against it. So it is like a catch-22 situation. And that is why you have to maintain this balance. You have to manage the Mahabhuta as well as the dosha within. So that is why oil massages are suggested in winter. If at all you're doing any therapies, Shirodhara oil is definitely great in winter. You can do it on children as well. Just do it only for 5 to 10 minutes. That might be the maximum. Or the other way around is doing Shiropichu. But you use oil. Children need oil in this season, and make sure you put warm oil on them. And in a very safe environment, it should be warm. You cannot give massage in a cold place, on a cold table. So definitely put on more sheets and make it warm for children when you give massages. And there are suggested diet and all of it, what to avoid and what not to avoid. The other thing I can tell you practically is, especially in winters, make sure you don't do any of these indulgent therapies after, in the afternoon or late during the day. Make sure you do all of that early in the morning. Give preference to more activity in the first half of the day. Any of the therapies that you're doing also should be focused in the first half of the day and not in the second half of the day. Second half of the day, you have to keep the mind clear as well as bring activity to a moderate level. If you fail to keep the mind clear and active in the second half of the day, the person will, have more kapha sanchaya, and not just that, it will go into a gloom. So it will succumb to this. The mind will succumb to this catch of akasha dominance as well as kapha sanchaya. So let there not be any tamas. Where you have to bring the activity. You have to move it from the inertia. You have to bring this rajasa guna in there, and that is why being active in the evenings is essential. Don't do too much of relaxation therapy in the evenings during winter. And then comes Vasanta. Vasanta is where you say, or the spring is when you say, it comes as a ray of hope after winter. So everyone is so interested in going out and doing activities, which is very fair. But it is also a very precarious season, because here, as you say, the rasa is kashaya and Agni is manda. Agni is very low. The digestive fire is very low, and the predominant rasa in the nature is kashaya. And Mahabhuta is Prithvi and Vayu. Bala is moderate. Bala reduces in winter. It is highest in late autumn. Reduces, comparatively reduces from that point during winter, and maintains a moderate level in spring. It definitely improves after winter, but it is not the best. But the key thing here is Agni is not very good. And because you feel so fine in spring, what we generally tend to do is we tend to indulge in all sorts of things. And that causes problems, along with everything else, that the change that is going on in the environment. The new flowers, the pollens, all the dust, and everything around us growing all of a sudden. This sudden change brings so much of chemical as well as particle imbalance in the environment. It is good, but it is very dynamic, and we have to be up to the mark if at all we have to go along with it. So when that doesn't happen, we have problems like hay fever, pharyngitis, lots of allergies. It could come from anything. And there are eruptive disorders as well. So we'll say something like chicken pox, or even boils and any other kind of eruptive disorders. It could be as severe as chicken pox, or it could be just mild as simple boils everywhere in the body. It is a time where there is kapha prakopa, but underneath there is pitta also playing around because of mandagni. It is not the specific time for pitta, but then when there is mandagni, there is fermentation, and that goes along with the kapha. So we have all of these problems. Whereas in winter, it is more predominant with bronchial asthma, upper respiratory tract problems, and going to pneumonia-like complications. Or it could be ear complications like otitis media. There might be severe kind of gastrointestinal disorders as well, and then the mental disorders predominantly during the winter. So it all changes to something very superficial during spring. Coming to the seasons of Adana Kala, after spring we have summer, where the character is heat. It could be windy or it could be stagnant, heavy with moisture, as happens in the tropical area. But heat is the predominant feature here. And it basically dries up everything. It dries up our body, dries the vegetation around, dries all the water bodies and so on. So because there is a scarcity of water, it is a practical problem as well that water gets contaminated. And because it is so hot and there is scarcity of water, we are more prone to dehydration. It's always affecting the Udukavasrotas here. So the problems that we see here are all related to Udukavasrotas or Rasavasrotas predominantly. The rasa here is Katu and the Mahabhuta is Agni and Vayu. Bala reduces. It is in one of the lowest states. We don't have a natural Bala here. And there's Vata Sanchaya, accumulation of Vata, and Kapha goes back to its normalcy. Agni is low again. So the Agni which was low during the spring continues to further go lower in the summer. And that causes Vata Sanchaya as well, the low Agni, and on top of it we indulge in something which is, naturally we indulge in things that are cooling in nature. It should be it is tested as well, but at the same time it gets into Vata Sanchaya. So basically the suggested diet here is something to mitigate Vata as well as to counter the heat. Something to remember here, and especially from the point of view of children, is to avoid physical exertion. There's generally holidays during summer. It's called summer holidays everywhere, and children would definitely like to go out and play. So the most important thing here is to remember to stay hydrated as well as take good amount of rest, because Bala is low and Agni is low. And characteristically, children are not the best ones to remember and eat at the right time. They don't, and they create problems for themselves for that particular season as well as for the coming seasons. And that is why it is important to stay indoors when there is extreme heat, depending upon your geographical location. Of course, you would all know that it is important to stay indoors at a particular time. It's only the morning and evening that you can go out. And we have to ensure that this happens. Going to the summer camp or going to any of the tournaments during summer, it might seem interesting, but it is not very, the best thing for health if at all they're in the ground all day long. It is in fact suggested to have a nap in the afternoon. Summer is the only time when Devaswapna is allowed or rather recommended. So if we take care during summer regarding all of these aspects, then we'll be in a better position to handle the next months, the coming months. Summer, although is very draining from the point of view of children, they are very active during summer because there is daylight, there is sunlight, and they get a lot of motivation, and the mind is very clear during summer. Although there are a few exceptions here, the seasonal affective disorder, which is specifically linked to depression, can also occur in summer, and it is because of the overexposure to the sunlight. So there is winter blue, everyone acknowledges it, but there is also summer blues, if you want to call it like that, and it should be acknowledged as well. There are children who go specifically into depression during summer, and the best thing to do for them is to expose them only to the early morning sun, that is before 8:30 or 9, depending upon where you live. And after 6 days along in summer, and in some parts of the world we may have sunlight, or it's practically like other time during the day up till 9:30 in the evening. So too much of sunlight can also cause problem for children and elderly. Even though the natural rhythm looks so stretched, it is important to maintain the biological clock. If it is the usual sleeping time for children, if your child goes to bed at 9, it is important to maintain the time during the summer as well. It is important to go to bed at 9 during summer as well. Because if we change this pattern, if they don't get enough sleep, then Agni is already Manda, Bala is already low, and they have more problems further on. And then there's the season of Varsha or rains. It is called as monsoon. In the tropical region, the pattern is different. To the evergreen forest region, the pattern is different. In temperate areas, the pattern is different. However, if at all we have a particular season of rain, as in season of monsoon or Varsha, then the characters would be like this. It's predominantly cloudy, with rains, showers, thunderstorms, and there's water everywhere, and the rasa turns to amla. Rasa turns to amla, and there is less of bala. There's prakopa of vata because there's too much of cold around. It is watery kind of coldness. It is not a winter coldness. Agni is vitiated specifically, but the Mahabhuta that is governing is different. So certain seasons bring this kind of mixed presentation, and that is when we have to be very, very careful. These are the seasons which gives us more of the problems. So Amla is there in the environment. Amla is also suggested to control Vata here. Amla Lavana, Sneha is suggested. And again, in this season, it is important to indulge in massage. Abhyanga and warm, followed with warm bath. It is essential to control Vata. And exposure to anything that is cold, anything that is damp, should be avoided. Dampness, which otherwise mitigates Vata, in this particular season increases Vata. It is very unsupportive to Vata, and hence we have to stay away from it. And children are more susceptible here because already they have less Bala, and when the Agni is vitiated, whatever is carried out from the summer is also affecting here, and they suffer more with gastroenteritis, different varieties of fever. It could be infectious, it could be whatever kind of fever, unknown origin. In tropical areas, especially, we have more of malaria, typhoid, and dengue, and things like that. It is not uncommon in other parts of the world as well. All sorts of infective agents become very active in this season as well as in spring. So spring and the rain, it is like a crossover season. They are actually crossover seasons, and they activate a lot in the environment of microbiota here around, which is around us as well as which is living within us. So there's too much of activity there, and too many species trying to multiply and be active, and that is why there's this kind of instability. And contaminations are also there, physical contaminations are also present, and contamination of doshas is also playing underneath, and that is why we have all of these problems. Bronchial asthma, and of course, in rare cases, like if at all we have children suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, it is a very bad period again for them. The rains and the clouds bring out the worst of, from bronchial asthma and rheumatoid arthritis. Wherever there is too much of armor, this is the worst time for all of that, all those conditions. And changing from that, we go to Sharad Ritu. So Sharad Ritu, or the early autumn, is when the sky clears out, but still the bala is medium. Agni improves from the earlier situation, and there is Lavana Rasa in the environment. Mahabhuta is up and Agni, and with this change, there are problems like skin diseases, this bleeding nose, fevers, and so on. So specifically looking into the dosha aspect, doshas follow, you might have observed in the slide earlier, doshas follow this particular pattern, the pattern of Chaya, Prakopa, and Prashama. Chaya is the collection or accumulation of dosha in its own place. Prakopa is the vitiation of dosha in its own place. And Prashama is natural subsiding of the dosha. It happens according to the season, and even if you try the best, there will be a little bit of Chaya, there will be a little bit of Prakopa, there will be a little bit of Prashama. We have to steer clear from this, from getting affected too much out of it. So you have to be very vigilant. You have to watch for the signs and symptoms, and then you have to balance it with the gunas. Hello. Yes, there's a little bit of the background noise that is going on. But if at all you cannot hear my voice at all, then probably we need to do something about it. Is it okay now? Can you hear me? Am I not still audible to you? Okay, I mean, things are clear from my end, and I think, yeah. Thank you, yeah. So, yeah, these are the properties that push the doshas to Chaya, Prakopa, and Prashama. Ruksha, etc., natural properties of the Vata, under the influence of Ushna, causes Chaya. And when the Ushna shifts to Shita, the warmth shifts to coldness during the rains, there is a sudden change, and then there is Prakopa of Vata. So wherever you don't have a specific season for rain, and there is rain practically all throughout the year, it is in those places you have to be extra careful. Say, for example, you have a peak summer day when the temperature is probably hitting 35 or 40 degrees Celsius, and there's rain, and after the rain it hits back to somewhere in early 20 or 15, as it happens in Melbourne all the time. It is in these places that you have to be very careful about Vata, because there's so much of change. You don't have a period for Chaya, and you don't have a period for Prakopa for Vata here. Vata is practically disturbing all the time. And when you have, when you are lucky enough to have a proper rainy season, Vata should naturally subside during the early autumn. As for Pitta, Pitta increases in its own place by volume under the with Tikshna, etc., natural gunas of Pitta under the influence of Shita. And it changes during the early autumn when there's sunshine, and Shita changes to Ushna. And later in the late autumn, it subsides naturally. Kapha accumulates in winter, undergoes vitiation during the spring, and subsides naturally in summer. So this happens in both the external and internal environment. The change happens, as you know, both in the external and internal environment. And the things we have to be mindful about to maintain the health is the Bala, the Agni, and maintaining the clear sources, clearing out the channels. In adults, we advise Rutu Shodhana as per according to the Rutu. In children, we cannot go for full-fledged Shodhana, and hence we have to do the modifications. Might be modification of the diet. It might be doing the detox in a very small scale manner. It could be skipping a meal or things like that. There are two factors here. One is the host factor and one is the agent factor. Agent is whatever is there in the external environment. It could be the virus, bacteria. I know we have this COVID situation, which is practically there in all seasons, and it's draining the whole year. And there's a host factor. Any challenge the external environment poses is handled by the host in certain way that determines the outcome. So the agent could be important, but more important is the host. Whatever is the agent, depending upon the immunity of the host, depending upon the protection the host has, the agent may succeed or fail. So the success of the host depends upon, again, the presence or absence of armor, clarity of the shoulders, and the strength of the bala. And hence, it is very, very important for us to adapt to the situation and maintain the bala. Balam yatnena samraksha. Bala is something that you have to put an effort to maintain, to safeguard. It doesn't come naturally. You're born with certain amount of bala, but you have to do certain exercises, to perform certain rituals, or indulge in certain activities to increase bala. If we don't preserve bala, if we don't keep on updating, it's like the antivirus. You have to do it. You have to keep on updating. Otherwise, it just goes out of date. It doesn't work anymore. So that is about bala. And to increase bala, we have to attend all of the other parameters that we attend when we do the Dashaveda prediction. So this is to explain the kind of challenge we have during the season. There's a type of prakopa which happens with chaya, prakopa, and goes to prashama, as we have discussed so far, which is natural process in any season. But then there is a known factor as well, Achaya Prakopa, which can happen suddenly. The disease causing factor is so powerful that it doesn't wait for chaya to happen. It doesn't wait for the imbalance to happen in a very natural, slow process according to the season. It might be an infectious organism, or it could be the change in the external parameter itself. With the climate change, we have lots of unpredictabilities. So any change that is very sudden always leads to an Achaya Prakopa. It can happen absolutely dramatically. And when that happens, you have to be very careful, because it has the power to cause imbalance in many sources and many dhatus as well. Whenever you go from this pattern, that is the step-by-step pattern of Sanchaya and Prakopa, you know that it is a slow process and it is affecting in a particular method, and you have time to reverse it. But when this happens, it is not a methodical thing. It is abrupt, and it is essential for you to fight it back with the same force. And this differentiation is important for us to understand when we deal with infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. Diseases that are natural for that season and diseases that are unnatural for that season. So in the earlier slides, we have seen the kind of pattern of the diseases that come naturally during that season. You expect them, you prevent them, you take protection against it. And still, even after all the kind of protection that you have taken, there could be a sudden imbalance because of the strength of the agent. And it is for these things that you have to, bring all your medicines, all your herbs, and then treat them. Whereas for those things that have come naturally with the Chaya and Prakopa, the best thing is to deal with lifestyle and diseases and lifestyle and diet, unless it goes into a full-fledged disease. So after Prakopa, there are two outcomes. It can go into the Prasara stage and become a full-fledged disease, or show all the symptoms of any particular disorder, or it can go into a downward curve and go back to normal. So doshas, usually if everything is proper, if you have followed the right seasonal regimen and daily regimens, they will go back to their balance. But if either if it is a very strong agent, or if it has if you have not balanced it very well, only then it would go to the Prasaravastha. So this is the point where you have to make it or break it. And that probably, you can assess very well with using, if you're users of Veda Pulse, you would get a better idea of what is going on and preempt it and prevent it using this device. So you can trade it with the pulse, and if you can do it by yourself, excellent. If you take help of the technology as well, that would also be good. So this is the health level. You might have seen in your device, this is the health level, and from 75 to 100%, you expect that is the place where you can say the bala is good, the immunity is good. The doshas, there could be imbalance in the doshas, but they're all in the acceptable range. The imbalance is in the acceptable range. Whereas if it dips below this level, from 75 to 50 is still manageable. There's an imbalance, it's a considerable imbalance. You have to do certain things to, manage it, but it is still in a manageable level. Whereas if it is below 50, if it has gone into this orange zone, then you're definitely under risk. So you have two ways to assess the situation of balance. One is the clinical symptoms, what you say in a person, and the other one, what you assess out of it, the things that you read from Pulse. So this gives a detailed insight to what is going on inside the body, what the person is not able to express. And in children specifically, this is important because they're not very good in communicating. They cannot differentiate between discomfort and pain. They may just, replace the words, or they may make it up depending on their convenience. They want to go out and play, and they may hide their discomfort. They may hide their problems when they want to hide it. And when they don't want to hide it, or when they want to escape from something, they may make complaints up. So in children specifically, it is important to look into the pulse, or important to go through a detailed clinical examination. Correlate both the narrations, or what the pulse is telling you and what the person is telling you. You have to correlate. The best way to deal with the seasonal problems, you expect those problems and you prevent it. So look into the health level. Look into the level of ojas, the adaptation level. Again, green is the zone that you have to be. If at all you're on the either side, then either there is too much of stress or there's too much of load. And with using these things, you can assess and you can prevent. Similarly, with this device, you also get details of which subdosha of the particular dosha is affected. You would get a graph like this, depending upon the subdosha. It also can tell you about the shrotas. Pulse reading is a very detailed science. It takes years of practice to go into this 7th level of pulse reading. And if at all we can take the help of technology to do it, as you cross-check with clinical symptoms or clinical signs and symptoms that you see, you can also do the same examination with pulse diagnosis, match them, and see what makes sense and what the person is having in front of you. And then you'd be in a better position to advise the diet, lifestyle, or herbal therapies. We do take help of laboratory investigations. We do so many blood examinations, but if there is something, all of those examinations will show the result only after there is an imbalance. They don't tell you when you can prevent it. They'll only tell you after you have it. So if there is some method which tells you that you're susceptible for this kind of imbalance and you're susceptible for this kind of problem, then why not? It's always good to expect and prevent it rather than suffer later. So this is just a chart I put about the seasonal fruits, vegetables, cereals, and spices and other things that could be consumed depending upon the season. There are lifestyle aspects as well. That was in the earlier slide. You can refer it later on as well. So the lifestyle aspects and dietary aspects, and a little more on the dietary aspects. I've put mostly only the vegetarian options here. If at all you want to include anything, any of the seafoods and other things, you can add it on. So mainly, how do we adapt? During the crossover of any season, like say from winter to spring and spring to summer, you know that the season is going to change in a particular time, and you have to cross over the regimens. So the recommended regimen from winter and the recommended regimen from spring have to be crossed over at the end of the winter and early spring. So 7 days, you can say. But I mean, it is the classical, that's what the classical text says. But practically, it's becoming more and more difficult for us to differentiate between the seasons. I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but at least I can say from the perspective of Melbourne, it is becoming very difficult. It is supposed to be spring from the 1st of September, but then I know it's Melbourne. It's always confusing. You're never sure what season it is. And even in India, I know that the rains are getting delayed, and the start of rain is delayed, the end of rain is delayed. I'm sure climate change is affecting all parts of the world, and hence this natural cycle of the seasons are getting affected as well. Observe carefully. The seasons could be shifting, and the pattern of season can also change. It is a part of nature. Whatever could be the reason, but that happens. And it has happened all throughout the history. The seasons have changed and the area have changed because the environment has changed. So be careful of what's going on, be mindful of what's going on in the nature and adapt to it. Plan a detox whenever it is a favorable season. The best time for detox, I would say, is spring. It is the most problematic season, and if at all you turn a key around during spring, you're in a better place to manage the rest of the seasons. So do detox, a full-fledged detox during spring when it is right. Go for it. It will help you come out of the winter blues. And it also help you to get ready for the immune assault during spring, and that is another way to make you sit inside the house and not get exposed to hay fever. For children, a full-fledged detox is not possible, and for them you can recommend rasayanas, a small detox, or like skipping or meals or fasting or putting on a particular diet. That is all right, even for children above the age of 6 or 7. You can put them on a restricted diet or a specific detox diet for about a week or 10 days. And after that, make sure you improve on Agni. Spring this challenge with Agni. Make sure you improve on Agni and build Bala. Introduce rasayanas. Introduce rasayana that is specific for pranavaha srotas during spring. And after that, during summer, introduce rasayanas that are specific to improve Agni. Summer, again, there is a challenge with Agni. So during spring, give for pranavaha srotas. During summer, give for annavaha as well as udakavaha srotas. They should be cared for. If you have cared for these three srotas in order, you're better prepared for the problems during the rains. So whatever imbalances occur with the doshas, they mainly affect these three srotas, as according to the season. When it is seasonal imbalance, it is these three srotas that get affected because they are very much dependent upon what happens with the environment, the pranavaha, udakavaha, and annavaha. And remember to modify and adapt to the change of the season. That is the most important thing, and very much relevant to present days, because everything is changing in a very fast mode. So this is the balance you have to play with the Rutu, and Rutu Sandhi with the season, and the crossing over of the season. So that is about it. Thank you very much. I am sorry for the noises we have in the background. Yeah, if at all you have any questions, I'm happy to take them, or you can write back to me. So thank you very much. Namaste.